But Richard Murray, Del Debbio's defense attorney, doesn't think his client got a fair trial. The judge did not allow the jury to take into account that the stress of a life-threatening situation can cause an officer to snap.
Sometimes they don't even hear the weapon going off. Their trigger fingers just continues to move.
Dr. Harvey Goldstein, a renowned police psychologist, was barred from explaining to the jury why Del Debbio reacted so aggressively.
The key testimony that I would have proffered was the one that says that this is a normal response to an abnormal situation.
Raise your right hand, place your
How human beings react under stress was very critical to this case, and I think by the court's rulings, the jury was not able to hear this testimony. I think that these were errors, in that sense, did deny Peter a fair trial.
I'll go beyond unfair. I think it's Neanderthal thinking. I truly do. I think in this day and age for a judge not to allow testimony on a phenomena that we have so much documentation on at this point was clearly not only unfair, but as I mentioned before, Neanderthal in thinking.
I fired 2, I looked and fired the remainder. I didn't agree with those decisions then, still don't agree with them. As I looked at it very intimately from both the criminal and administrative perspective, I did not find anything wrong with Officer Del Debbio's actions.
He should have been found guilty of attempted murder. But that's politics. That's racism.
Robert Rivers was a New York City detective for 28 years. Now he's retired and teaches karate at his neighborhood center. He's also a member of the Guardians, an organization made up of black police officers who thought Del Debbio's actions were criminal and more.
We viewed it as a racist shooting, strictly because policemen are not trained to shoot anyone in the back.
It's been almost 5 years since Officer Del Debbio shot Officer Robinson on that subway platform. But the memories continue to haunt those involved. And African-American police officers say there's potential for the same thing to happen every day. And the NYPD is doing nothing to stop it.
How did this accidental shooting happen? And could it happen again? Next on Crime Stories.
When you think back to that moment, what's the thing that comes to your mind first?
I should have taken a day off. That's what starts my thoughts. I should have taken a day off.
Officer Robinson was working undercover at the Lexington Avenue and 53rd Street subway station. He was looking for pickpockets, his specialty. Officer Del Debbio had just gone off duty and was waiting to board the F train for home. Suddenly, a fleeing teenager dropped a loaded shotgun and it went off. Reacting to the shot, Officer Del Debbio pulled out his shield and identified himself to the panicked passengers.
I drew my gun somewhere in this time frame, bent down, picked up the shotgun, looking over my right shoulder, and that's the first point in which I detect movement.
A bullet fired by a uniformed cop on the scene hit Del Debbio in the arm as he turned back to the platform. That's when he saw Officer Robinson and thought the worst.
And at that point, I decided I have to fire in order to prevent him from shooting me.
Officer Robinson was also responding to the shot and had drawn his gun as he ran along the platform. He did not take out his police shield, nor was he wearing the color of the day, a brightly colored band worn by undercover cops to identify themselves. Earlier, he had removed his bulletproof vest.
I had my weapon in front of me and I felt that I was shot. I heard a shot go off and I felt it.
He says he never saw Del Debbio.
We're talking about a situation that developed very quickly at rush hour in the subways. There was pandemonium down there. Peter was reacting to the situation.
The prosecution called Officer Del Debbio's reaction extreme, but Dr. Goldstein calls it a very human response to fear.
The brain chemistry of someone who perceives a life or death situation has a range of behavior attached to it. It can range anywhere from a frozen fright to an extremely aggressive reaction, depending on the past cataloging of experience that an individual has had in their lifetime.
Rivers doesn't buy that explanation. He says police are different. They're trained to respond to threatening situations.
The proper procedure when somebody is advancing on you is to take some type of cover. Try to identify this person. Is this the so-called bad guy, or is it a police officer out of uniform?
What do you think happened that day?
I'd have to say Pete saw me and was scared. I don't know the circumstances of where exactly we were and how it happened. I remember I was pointing my weapon one way, and next thing I knew, I got shot.
Do you remember when you learned that the person you had shot was a fellow officer, what your feeling was, what your reaction was?
I can't even describe it. Something so horrific, like a pain, or like you injured a child, or I injured a loved one, or something like that. I viewed it as a fellow officer, a brother officer.
Both officers were rushed to Bellevue Hospital. On the day of Del Debbio's release, he asked to see Robinson.
My friends came to me and said Pete was a police officer and he was having a hard time. Let's make him feel better. Go and say, things happen, and if we were in switched places, maybe I would have done the same thing. I don't remember exactly what the words were, but I'd have to say, don't blame yourself.
It looked like the two men made their peace. Then their bedside meeting was staged again so that the mayor and police brass could be there for the photos.
It was a very moving meeting. So Robinson's remarks and in some respects almost a forgiving tone, and quite obviously Officer Del Debbio was very distraught.
The commissioner deserves
City officials were eager to have this potentially volatile case closed, and the headlines announced all is forgiven. But Robinson swore from his hospital bed that he never forgave Del Debbio.
I couldn't see myself forgiving somebody for shooting me in the back.
Did he forgive you in that meeting?
Yes, he did.
What did he say?
He understood that it was in the course of both of us trying to race to something, to do good, to correct the wrong, and he had forgiven me.
I don't remember the gist of what I did say because I was doing enough drugs at that particular point through needles that I didn't care much about anything. But I think it was wrong of the media and the mayor to use it that way, as opposed to some other way to make things better.
Robinson's lawyer has a simpler explanation.
It was done to make the mayor of the city of New York look good, and no other reason.
My lung had been punctured, it was closed.
Officers Del Debbio and Robinson would not meet again until they faced each other in court.
I was in the hospital for a month.
It was a case of one officer's word against another's. Del Debbio swore Robinson was coming toward him the whole time, but Robinson remembers going past Del Debbio before he was shot 4 times in the back.
We believe the subsequent shots were between the off-duty New York City police officer in plainclothes and at least one of the 6 transit police officers who were
William Bratton, the former police commissioner, was at the scene moments after the shooting, but he can't figure out what actually happened.
I don't know that we ever will, but I think there was enough of a doubt there that I don't personally believe that Officer Del Debbio shot Officer Robinson in the back after he had already gone by him.
But the point is, the 4 shots entered his rear. Nevertheless, he was turned around. And then he was down.
The defense claimed that the bullet that hit Del Debbio passed through his arm and grazed Robinson's chest, causing him to turn and take 4 of Del Debbio's 5 shots in the back.
That initial graze wound caused Officer Robinson, who's coming forward, to start to pivot. And as he is pivoting, he's continuing forward.
Our medical examiner and the city medical examiner found that in at least 2 instances, Robinson was flat out on his stomach, down, when he was shot. So there's no way that he was pirouetting around the subway.
It was also difficult for the defense to explain away 5 shots. As Detective Rivers says, Del Debbio should have stopped shooting if Robinson was down.
If you continue to shoot the individual, that's when you crossed over that line, from being a police officer into being an aggressor, or to being a criminal.
One of the things that I've learned as a police psychologist is not to really question the judgment of an individual who feels that their life is in danger. But I will say this, the act of firing the weapon and the number of bullets that Peter fired is totally consistent with somebody who clearly felt like their life was in danger.
Peter reacted exactly in a manner in which he'd been trained, totally consistent with all his training. And I really don't believe, notwithstanding the verdict, that you can fault him.
Given what I had to work with that night, I would do everything exactly the same as what I did. I have absolutely no regrets in the performance and what I observed and what I thought about and what I did.
What Del Debbio did was set into motion a chain of events that would change the course of both men's lives.
For Robinson, the road to recovery is blocked by a charge of rape. When we come back.
Do you think the fact that he was black had anything to do with the shooting?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I think given those circumstances and how they unfolded, I would have reacted the same way, no matter the ethnic background of the person that I confronted.
But there was another factor besides stress and race, which some believed may have triggered Del Debbio's rapid-fire response. In 1990, 4 years before he shot Robinson, Peter Del Debbio had been assaulted by 3 black men on the subway. It left a mark.
They grabbed my girlfriend at the time and made her stand up. They made me stay seated. They ripped a gold chain that I had around my neck. They tore that off. They demanded my wallet. They took that, took our cash. Towards the end, they held out my right hand and said that I would not be a cop anymore. And with that, they attempted to cut off my right index finger and my trigger finger.
The tip of Del Debbio's right index finger was severed in that assault.
I don't know what kind of counseling, debriefing, or processing he had of that experience. But if you're asking, does one traumatic incident play a role in another one? Yes, it can, but we don't know exactly how it plays out.
Murray remembers that Del Debbio did not receive any counseling at that time, but says the 2 incidents are unrelated.
I don't think it had any bearing whatsoever. He sees a man running towards him with a gun. It's essentially a life-threatening situation, and he has to make an instantaneous evaluation.
All the senses are telling you this was dangerous before. How could you ignore them? You would have to have your brain blotted out to ignore them. So to me, it's impossible to negate, or totally negate, one's past experience as you enter into the next trauma.
And unless these experiences are addressed, police actions can become dangerous reactions.
The traditional and conventional wisdom of the past prior to psychological services in policing was, get back on your horse, if you've fallen off. Well, that doesn't work for everybody.
That's something the department has to be very mindful of before returning an officer to work.